Sony's impressive first-party portfolio has always been one of PlayStation's biggest strengths, and it's something that has consistently improved as time has gone by. Part of that is because of Sony's willingness to keep trying new things, and while that has very clear and obvious advantages, in that we keep seeing excellent new IP from their studios every generation, that also means that established and beloved franchises are often left to fade into memory. There's been quite a few of those over the years, and with the PS5 right around the corner, we're hoping that a few of these will be returning to the limelight. In this feature, we'll be talking about 15 such first-party Sony properties that we're hoping will make a comeback on the PS5. We are not, of course, suggesting that all 15 of these should. That's just an unreasonable expectation, but hopefully Sony will pick and choose at least a few of these and deem them to be worthy of renewed investment. With all that out of the way, let's get started. Siphon Filter. It's been a long time since we last got a Siphon Filter game, and even longer since the series' last console entry. Sony Bend have, of course, moved on to Days Gone now, and chances are that they'll be working on a sequel next, but Siphon Filter is a game we find ourselves thinking of again and again and again, no matter how much time passes. The shooter/stealth series has never been one of Sony's flagship big hitters, but it always had a dedicated legion of fans that kept hoping for its return. Hopefully that day will come during the PS5 era. Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal was absolutely huge in the days of the PS1 and PS2, but the franchise's stock has certainly fallen over the last decade and a half. Sony did try to revitalize it with a reboot on the PS3, but that wasn't nearly as successful as they would have hoped. After that, they just sort of gave up. Twisted Metal completely disappeared, and it's remained off the radar for a long time now. We don't know if the franchise will ever come back, or if it has a place in Sony's first-party lineup as it exists today, but we sure hope that it manages to fight its way back to the top. Jak and Daxter. It's been years since Jak and Daxter was an active franchise, but the demand for a new game in the series refuses to go away. Given Sony's focus on narrative-driven, realistic, cinematic action-adventure games, it makes sense that Jak and Daxter hasn't managed to carve out a place for itself in their pipeline over these last few years, and it's hard to see Naughty Dog as it exists today ever going back to the series. But given how popular it is, and how much it used to mean to PlayStation during the PS2 era, our hope is that Sony will eventually decide to give it one more shot not long from now. LITTLEBIGPLANET. LITTLEBIGPLANET was one of many new franchises Sony introduced on the PS3, and it was also perhaps one of the most successful. It was definitely the most innovative. It popularized Media Molecule's play, create, share philosophy, but like many of its peers, it couldn't keep its momentum on the PS4. Media Molecule are probably going to be busy with Dreams for years to come, so we don't know if they'll go back to LITTLEBIGPLANET anytime soon. That said, we do know Sackboy: A Big Adventure is coming to the PS5, so hopefully Sony will see a future for the series. SOCOM. Sony's current lineup of first-party franchises has a gaping hole that needs to be filled: tactical multiplayer shooters. Thankfully, they have just the thing to do that, assuming they ever decide that it's a hole worth filling. When SOCOM was good, its co-op action and multiplayer gameplay was pristine, and we would love to see Sony letting a developer have another crack at that with the backing of a full AAA budget. PATAPON. Sony has ported Patapon 1 and 2 to the PS4 over the last few years, so fans of the zany series have had at least something to keep them going, but it's high time for a proper sequel. The Patapon trilogy was a shining jewel in the PSP's library, and we would love to see it making a similar impression on the PS5. Given its very nature, it's hard to imagine a Patapon game being a major flagship game on Sony's next-gen console, but every console needs some standout, weird, offbeat games in its library, and we're hoping a new Patapon will occupy that role on the PS5. MOTORSTORM. The arcade racing genre has died a slow and painful death this generation, which has been absolutely heartbreaking to see. MOTORSTORM is perfectly emblematic of that. After delivering a number of excellent games on the PS3, on the PS4, it just completely fell off the stage. The fact that Evolution Studios no longer exists doesn't spell good things for MOTORSTORM, but a resurgence of arcade racers is a thing we desperately want to see happen during the next generation of consoles, and if that does happen, hopefully MOTORSTORM will lead the charge. WIPEOUT. Speaking of arcade racers, how could we possibly talk about that genre on PlayStation and not discuss WIPEOUT? The fact that WIPEOUT Omega Collection on the PS4 was one of the best racers we've played this gen should tell you something about how good this franchise is when it's at its best. And if a touched-up collection of older games can be that good, how good would a full-fledged new entry be? Here's hoping Sony agrees with that line of thinking and greenlights a new WIPEOUT game. Sly Cooper. The PS2 era saw Sony's first parties dominating the scene with iconic platforming mascots, with the trio of Ratchet, Jack, and Sly delivering one hit after another. Ratchet is still going strong, and we've already spoken about Jack, which leaves Sly. And of course we want him to come back. The stealthy raccoon's adventures were something to behold when they were on the top of their game, and it's a real shame that he hasn't had a chance to shine on the big stage in so long. Sucker Punch have seemingly struck gold with Ghost of Tsushima, so we don't know if they'll be returning to Sly Cooper anytime soon, if ever, but hopefully Sony will find a reason to flip through the pages of the Thievius Raccoonus once more. Infamous. Yes, we've got Spider-Man on PlayStation now, but before Sony got arguably the world's most popular superhero as an exclusive, they had their own homegrown superhero franchise with Infamous. Developed by Sly Cooper dev Sucker Punch, Infamous enthralled everyone with its imaginative superpowers, its morality system that allowed for players to feel as though they had some ownership over the character, and a series of strangely well-done high-stakes stories. Sucker Punch has, however, long since left the series behind, and again with the enormous success of Ghost of Tsushima, it feels unlikely we're getting another Infamous anytime soon. Here's hoping though. Maybe we can get Infamous and Ghost of Tsushima both next generation, and if nothing else, Sony can always just outsource the game to another developer. WARHAWK, STARHAWK. The lack of dedicated multiplayer properties in Sony's first-party pipeline is something we've discussed in this feature, and if Sony ever does decide that's something they want to address on the PS5, WARHAWK, STARHAWK, or a game in the vein of those two will surely be a frontrunner. The ambitious, large-scale multiplayer battles of both these games caught the attention of so many people on the PS3, and to this day, these two games are considered to be among the best multiplayer offerings of the 7th console generation. Large-scale multiplayer is now bigger than ever in the industry, especially with Battle Royale's popularity growing to ridiculous proportions, so hopefully Sony will strike the iron while it's hot and make another game that follows in the footsteps of these two. Ape Escape. Ape Escape was created for a very specific purpose, to sell players on the then new DualShock controller on just how cool analog sticks could be for games. Obviously, it did its job well, but while the DualShock has since then thrived and survived through every generation of PlayStation, though PS5 seems to be finally killing it with the DualSense, the game that was used as its launchpad hasn't been so lucky. While we had Ape Escape sequels we all liked, the series has now been dormant for over a decade. There have been signs recently that Sony may be planning a revival, such as an Ape Escape Twitter account being created, but then a year later it was shut down and there's no new Ape Escape game. Will there ever be another one? We can only hope. Even a remake like the one the first one got for the PSP, though preferably not as bad, would be welcome at this point. Resistance. Insomniac is the rare PlayStation first party headed into the next generation with two big and active IPs under their wing, with Spider-Man and Ratchet & Clank both confirmed to hit the PS5 within the early years of that console's life. Insomniac's PS3 era outing, however, seems to be much less cared for by Sony. The Resistance franchise was a series of unique first-person shooters with an engaging story and some really inventive weapons. Unfortunately, the games were never really big sellers, and the last entry in the franchise, Burning Skies on the PS Vita, was so horribly bad and sold so poorly that it may have killed the franchise for good. But you know what? We would love to see another one, especially if it's like Resistance 3. They weren't perfect, but they were nonetheless great games that stood out in a homogenized market, which we could always use more of. The odds of Insomniac actually doing a third AAA IP next generation, however, seem slim to none, and after Burning Skies, we'd really rather not see anyone other than Insomniac have a crack at it either. Maybe we can at least get the long overdue remasters of the original games, if nothing else. PARAPPA the Rapper. PARAPPA the Rapper is one of Sony's most unique properties, and though it is, owing to its very nature, a rather niche franchise, there is a loyal and dedicated fan base that swears by its rhythmic adventures to this day. PARAPPA the Rapper has been MIA for nearly 2 decades now, which means at this point even the most avid series fans have started giving up hope for a comeback, but as we mentioned earlier, it's good to have offbeat experimental games in your lineup to break up the pace of all the major AAA releases, of which the PS5 will presumably have no shortage. PARAPPA the Rapper might not be the biggest or even the most relevant name in Sony's catalog of franchises, but we're sure there's a group of people who would absolutely love to see another game in the series in the near future. KILLZONE. It's weird that all of these massive Sony franchises that were so big on the PS3, Killzone, Resistance, Infamous, have faded into the background over the last few years. Killzone's fall is definitely the most surprising of the bunch, given how successful both Killzone 2 and 3 were. Sure, Shadowfall's disappointing nature had something to do with that, as did the fact that Guerrilla moved on to Horizon and found some incredible success, but we feel there's still a lot of potential in Killzone. No franchise does what Killzone does quite as well in terms of delivering that kind of gritty, weighty shooting, and the series' multiplayer has been typically excellent. Sony would really benefit from having a big-budget, multiplayer-driven first-person shooter franchise thriving on PlayStation once more, and hopefully a new Killzone game would come along and do just that. And that wraps it up. If you like what we are doing, please consider subscribing to our channel, and don't forget to switch on the bell notification icon. That way you will never miss out on any of our videos.